I'm Michael, and welcome to Beyond the Screenplay, the podcast where each episode we do a conversational deep dive analysis into a film. Today we are talking about Project Hail Mary, the 2026 film by Screenplay by Drew Goddard, directed by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, based on the novel by Andy Weir. I'm joined by the Beyond Screenplay team, Trisha Arand.
Hello, everyone.
Brian Bittner.
Amaze.
And Alex Calleros.
I was going to do a Rocky thing and I couldn't think of one, so hi.
Fist my bump, baby.
Okay, so before we dive in, a couple just housekeeping things to talk about. So we mentioned this, I think, on our last episode, but we, for Fight Club, released some extra experimental kinds of content over on the Beyond Screenplay YouTube channel. We did a breakdown of the whole 3-act structure of the film. We looked at the opening 10 minutes or so to talk about how Fight Club teaches you to watch it, and we looked at how you block actors and create movement in the scene. So those 3 videos are over on YouTube. Check them out. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this new format and if you'd like to see more of this kind of thing. So leave your thoughts while you're there. Even right now, if you happen to be watching on YouTube, liking and subscribing, always welcome. Letting the algorithm know that you like this and you think other people might like it too.
Watch this video first, though.
Yeah, or multitask. You can do it.
Yeah.
I have faith in you. And then also, of course, our episode on The Martian is over on the Beyond Screenplay Patreon, relevant. So that's over there. So now we're going to talk about Project Hail Mary. Often when we do our hot takes and talk about new movies that have just come out, we end up nitpicking and complaining about things that are like, I didn't like that. I wish they would have done that instead. And rest assured, listener, I think we're still going to do plenty of that. But to start us off, I want to have us all go around and ask questions. What's on our minds? What do we want to explore and dig into in this conversation and see what kind of a frame jumpstart that gives us. So I'll start. I have been thinking a lot about, does the first act of this movie properly set up the rest of the movie that you're about to see? In particular, Grace's character arc. And I'll say no more than that. I just want to put that out there. That's sort of that's my thought right now. The setup for this movie and how it sets up its arc. Brian, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, because we were talking about structure with Fight Club, I've had structure on the brain. And I was thinking during this movie, we have these 2 separate timelines that don't affect each other at all. I kind of thought at first it was going to be one of these things where he's having flashbacks, and as he remembers a thing, then in the present, he's like, oh, right, that thing is over there. I can go, find that thing that'll let me eat today or whatever. And instead, it's just 2 timelines that happen in parallel throughout the course of the movie. And I was thinking, what is sort of the responsibility, or what are the guidelines for structure with that? Because if both of them have a 3-act structure, both of them tell a complete story. But if you just put like the inciting incidents next to each other and then the midpoints next to it, it's going to feel very formulaic and like you're just kind of being repetitive along the way. But then if you leave out those big beats, then, you leave out the big beat of timeline A and just keep it for timeline B, then maybe the story doesn't feel complete. You're kind of like, where was that structural beat that I needed? And I don't know the answer to that. I know that this movie, there are some beats where I feel it, like the inciting incident in the past of her coming and recruiting him and all that. That feels very inciting incident-y. But in the present, we don't really have like a big, now this, until like kind of into the end of the first act, beginning of the second act, of like there's a crazy ship here. Otherwise, he's just kind of hanging out, going through stuff, trying to figure out who he was, right? We don't have like kind of a shift structural beat. But then other times in the movie, it feels like we have a big crisis for both timelines. So I'm just kind of curious how all of that works, and I made some notes along the way, and I did just kind of fascinated by it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So in a story with parallel timelines that aren't affecting each other, how do you organize the main structural turning points across it?
I could have just said that, but I said more.
Alex, what about you?
Yeah, watching this movie, I was feeling, how do you place this in kind of a genre category or even a tone category? What is this movie? I haven't seen anything like this for a long time. And I think the closest thing I could think of was kind of a classic, almost 80s Spielberg family adventure film. And, the kind of movie that has a lot for adults. It has genuine awe. It has genuine sci-fi ideas and science, but also extremely family friendly in a lot of ways. And so I think it's just really interesting to see a movie like this, and it's doing very well, both critically and at the box office. And I think there's something that maybe we haven't had in the culture for a long time, which is this kind of Spielbergian family adventure movie that hits all the quadrants and hits all the ages. So I want to explore, is that what this movie is? Is it not? What do you guys think about that?
Nice. Okay. We'll have a new Spielberg movie soon. Based on the trailer, I don't think it's going to be that, but who knows? Okay, cool. And Trisha, what about you?
So I was reading some reviews of this movie today because often I find they help me organize my own thoughts about a new movie when I'm reading reviews. I should read reviews about old movies too. So anyway, but a lot of the reviews that I read mentioned the many references and homages and also just genre forebears of this movie. Basically, all of the other sci-fi films in movie history that feels like this movie is indebted to those films and also directly references them at many times. And sometimes that was mentioned in a critical way by some of the critics that I was reading, and sometimes it was mentioned in like a positive way. And I was very curious about the way that we receive references and like tone and homage to other genre movies. So actually, I'm going to ask my question in the words of a critic that I read today. This is from Robbie Collin, writing for The Telegraph, which is how his review opens. If a new science fiction film strongly reminds you of a handful of others, how much of a problem is it when those others are among the best things that the genre has done in 25 years?
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. That is interesting. We have questions. We have questions to dig into here. And I do think there's a lot of overlap. I feel like Trish and Alex, yours are sort of in a similar bucket. And Brian, I think yours and mine might be in a similar bucket. Maybe to start, Alex, I feel like yours is the sort of biggest, broadest, genre question of like, how are we thinking about this film? Let's start there. What do you guys think? I was definitely thinking throughout this about E.T. and
Definitely. Your
I think
favorite film.
my favorite film, as everyone knows. And I hadn't I hadn't gone all the way to what you were saying, Alex, there of like, this is the Spielbergian family friendly, like that whole thing. I was just fixated on the E.T. relationship side of things. But it does feel like that is perhaps one of these, genre forebears that you're mentioning, Trisha, that this is referencing. I'm curious. So also for listeners, we all saw this movie together, which is always fun and always leads to an extremely awkward post-movie experience because we can't talk about it because we don't want to spoil anything for the podcast. We just stand around awkwardly.
We do that a lot anyway.
It's true, but so I guess, Trisha, why don't you talk to me about this genre Spielberg thing as a Spielberg lover? What do you make of this question from Alex?
I think this is a fair question. I feel like you're picking on me because I was sitting directly next to you and I was laughing a lot during this movie. I feel like I was the loudest person in our movie theater because I was laughing a lot during this movie.
I wish I could remember the one moment where you were like, just like the theater was laughing at you laughing.
I don't know. This movie struck me as really funny in the moment, and I have lots of like critical things to say about it. But I did find it really entertaining. And I thought a lot of the comedy worked, or at least it worked for me. And I think that the tone is really important to what you're talking about, Alex, right? Spielbergian movies like this sort of like, really what we're talking about is like a high concept action adventure, often with, sci-fi space element, but really like a high concept action adventure movie from the 80s or 90s. And those films have the wonder that you mentioned. They're usually really earnest, which I
Mhm.
feel like this movie is really earnest.
Yes.
They're usually hopeful and optimistic, which this movie really is optimistic. And then they also often have some kind of like, lightness to them, a cuteness, a humor, like, which can border on saccharine, right? And that goes back to
Mhm.
like how they feel heartwarming. It's like, oh, okay, now it's so cute. Look at all these little Rockies here at the end, which I do want to get back to.
It's how the book ends.
I know. I read that that's how the book ends, and I'm like, okay. Maybe
weirdly the
Andy
same
Weir is the
exact-
problem.
Well, it's the same exact ending as The Martian. It's like the
Right.
literal like
Oh,
teacher
yeah.
saying any questions and like all the hands go up.
Yeah. But I do think that all of that together, especially with the Spielberg has said before that, like, if you were to boil a lot of his most beloved movies down into one image, it would be the image of the child standing in the open lit doorway from Close Encounters, which just conveys that childlike sense of wonder. And this like coming close to the unknown or the mysterious. And it's interesting. There's actually a shot like almost exactly like that in the Disclosure Day trailer. And I'm like, I see you, Steve. But
Steve. Oh, Steve.
But I do feel like the experience of watching this movie gives me that feel, right? Like it captures a lot of that feeling. And I love an earnest movie and I love an optimistic movie. And I think that there are places when this movie is very affecting, and not just because it made me laugh, but there are other places where it's really working and there are emotions being had.
I was genuinely tearing up at multiple moments in this movie. And I read the book, and it was really interesting as a book reader. It is a very faithful adaptation of the book, but it's an interesting thing where the book has everything that is in the movie is in the book, but because of the filmmakers here, Lord and Miller, they are leaning into the kind of goofiest, most humorous aspects as much as possible when possible. When Ryan Gosling is waking up out of a coma. In the book, that's this like, disorienting, what the hell is happening? There's like a machine above me. It's not as funny or light as, he's like a slug in a sleeping bag and he's kind of
screaming.
He's being like slapped around by the robot. There is that clumsiness and that kind of like, where the hell am I coming out of a coma in the book? But they're finding the most slapstick, the most kind of almost kids movie version of that scene. So it was really interesting watching the movie and feeling like it's all there. It's all from the book. It's all honest to the source material, but they are finding the most, I guess, kid-friendly, funny, light version of it. And so I had this strange feeling of both like, I can't complain because this is all right. This is all correct. This is what the book said, but it is the Lord and Miller, version of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting comparing this to The Martian, where The Martian is Ridley Scott. It feels like someone who desperately wants to make a rated R movie, but like has to not, right?
Like, isn't allowed.
You even have like multiple swear words in that movie that are being edited by the movie itself, like the way that it's done, which is actually really fun in that movie. But you have something that feels more adult, even if it is still kind of a family-friendly, somewhat four quadrant-y kind of thing. And with this movie, I remember seeing the original kind of trailers and things and just like Ryan Gosling and like, is that kind of who I want at the front of like this kind of movie? And then seeing some of the trailers, just like some of the more jokey stuff in the trailers, and he's gonna dance with Rocky, which like, don't put that in the trailer. Like the trailer should end with the tapping on the glass and then we see nothing else, but that's not how trailers work. unfortunately. And then I saw this movie and was like, oh, right, okay. For this movie, Ryan Gosling is the perfect choice to play
Yes.
this character in this type of movie, this tone of movie. And yeah, the tone may not be for me, but it's like that's kind of the point, is it's trying to be for everyone. So how do we not go too
Right.
far in the overly comedic? How do we not go too far in some of the darker stuff that this movie does, explore, and try to stay neatly in there, and not in my Star Wars sandwich metaphor where when you try to add everything onto a sandwich, you get some disgusting thing because everyone is a little bit for everyone, but in a way where everything feels like it's all of a piece. It's just of a piece that doesn't go too far in any one direction. Um, and yeah, like I was talking about this in the movie with my partner afterwards, and I was like, it was just a movie-ass movie. Like
Yeah.
in that way that we did, like you said, Alex, we don't get a lot these days. I think if like Joseph Kosinski is trying to bring back this Top Gun, Twister, um, Days of Thunder, with his sort of like, we're going to do a big blockbuster that is, trying to do like real effects as much as we can, then yeah, as you were saying, this feels like Project Hail Mary feels like that Spielberg adventure, family friendly kind of sense of wonder. I'm going to feel at the end like I went on this kind of incredible journey that only a movie can take me on. And I think that's cool. And I think that I like the kind of, now that we're getting exhausted with the whole superhero thing from the last like 15 years, we're kind of going back to what were movies before that whole thing, that we're kind of missing today.
Mm.
And I think you kind of mentioned the spectrum there. And I think that's the interesting part that reminds me of classic Spielberg, is the spectrum of going all the way to some fairly dark places, some existential dread about the end of the world, some really sad stuff with the cute alien essentially dying, E.T. style. So I think it's that Spielberg family flick that isn't afraid to go super dark, but then also isn't afraid to go super cute. So it's like super cute and dark and big awe. And that is a combination of things that kind of barely holds together, but when it does, it gives you that full spectrum. And as a kid, seeing a movie like that, it's really rewarding. Like seeing Jurassic Park as a kid gives you lots of feelings, and the awe and the scares and the laughs, and it's a special kind of experience, especially as a kid.
Mm.
I think there's something about the edge, though, that the Spielberg 80s movies had that I was missing in this movie. And this is where I'm going to probably wander into me complaining about the movie a little bit. But I think tonally, I was expecting a very science-y movie. And part of that is my fault. Part of that is what I'd heard from people, my extrapolations of that. Part of that is me knowing The Martian and how science-forward that movie is. And so I think part of me was expecting like, oh, this is going to be another smart, hard sci-fi movie. And instead, to your point, Alex, it's Ryan Gosling like a worm falling out of bed and making jokes all the time. And like, it was more like a Pixar movie than it was like a hard sci-fi movie.
Yeah, actually, Pixar was the other thing I thought about.
Yeah.
It felt like this was a live action Pixar movie.
Yes.
Which is a
100%.
compliment in a lot of ways, but if you're not expecting that, then it can be a little bit of a shock.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wasn't, and it was, and I struggled with that the entire movie, essentially. But I do think that there is even an E.T., when I think back on it, there is a holding of the sort of scary realism of this alien creature, right? And E.T. is not conventionally attractive or cute. He becomes cute through the filmmaking and all this stuff, right? But there is a scariness and an edge to it. And so I think while this movie does go to some thematically dark places momentarily, I feel like I'm never worried or scared or believing in the scientific wonder that even I find in like E.T. And so and some of that I think can pertain to the character arc, which we'll talk in a bit, but that is something that if we're comparing it to classic Spielberg, that I was missing here, that it felt a little too safe and a little too goofy for me to ever worry or be that invested in the goings on.
It's interesting because once again, thinking about the book, novels usually make for better limited series adaptations because there's just too much for even 2.5 hours of film content to do justice. And it's really impressive to me that they managed to make a movie out of this novel because there is a lot in this novel to pack in, and they packed in all the most important stuff. But I think they necessarily had to pick and choose where are we going to put our focus. And they're very much choosing to put their focus on the emotional, cute relationship with Rocky at the heart of this movie, which is there in the novel too. And the audiobook is really delightful because the reader does a great job doing the Rocky synthetic voice, and it is really earnest and sweet and likable. So that is at the heart of the book as well, but the book is a lot more time for that Martian style science-y stuff, which is like mentioned and like words are said in the movie extremely quickly that you may or may not even hear that are pointing to the science-y stuff, but we never actually get into the meat of it in the way that the book can because there's not enough time. If you did a limited series, maybe you could, but there's only enough time for certain things, and they chose the heart, the emotion, which I think is the right choice for a movie if you have to make a choice.
And maybe I'll just quickly insert here a bit more of the framing around my question because it is sort of about this. And so, yeah, talking to my other friend who had read the book, he sort of said there was sort of 3 movements in the book. Tell me if you think this is wrong, but that the beginning, when he's waking up and trying to remember who he is, it feels very Martian-y. It is more of a mystery. He's using science and measuring things and calculating pi and cube roots in order to... I read the first 2 chapters and I was like, oh yeah, this is, I think, the movie that I thought I was going to go see. Of like,
and he is like writing on a whiteboard in like a montage, but you have no idea what he's writing or why or for what purpose or what goal.
Right. The movie kind of, and that's sort of, I think, to your point of what did they choose to focus on. I feel like the movie sort of yada yadas past the I have to go from step A to step B to step C to like solve the thing, which I think The Martian does really well, where it makes you feel the believability and all the work that this character has to do to survive. But as we called out in The Martian doesn't have a character arc. And so I think it's interesting that this movie does choose to focus on the relationship with Rocky. But what I was missing in the setup for the character is that flaw, that weakness, that what is this character missing in his life that makes Rocky the solve? And we get that by the end of the movie. At the end of the movie, we learn he's a coward, quote unquote, and he needs to learn to be brave. And we learn that he doesn't have anyone at home that he cares about. And so at the end of the movie, right before he makes his final choices, we learn what his character flaw is, and sort of you can retroactively apply that arc. But I think it's interesting that they don't hang a lantern on those missing pieces of the character arc in that first act. And I think in the book it's there a little bit more, even just in the section that I read, but also considering that so much of the movie is about that relationship, is that getting set up?
I love that as a question. I was thinking a lot about it too. And part of my confusion around it, I think, just comes from like basic expository work and narrative device that the movie doesn't seem to care to do. So this is kind of related to Brian's question about the flashbacks, but like, I assume when I'm being shown a flashback that is then Grace remembering the same thing that I'm being shown, because the editing is sort of implying to me that that's happening. Or
it's
like
kind of hazy kind of lens blur that's happening, kind of suggesting this is coming back.
To be clear, I'm not getting like, when I come out of a flashback, I don't get a moment on Grace's face where he goes, like I remembered a thing. And at no point, again, to Brian's question, like at no point does something he remembered suddenly affect what he's doing in the present, up until sort of the end, which is kind of what you're getting at there, Michael, with the character arc. But I think that there's just like a basic expository thing of like, if this is a flashback and it is Grace remembering it at the same time, probably that should be a little bit more explicit, that he remembered this much and nothing more than that. Because as it is, I'm like, oh, he got his memory back. Wait, no, he only remembered 2 scenes of it? Like, and if he's still confused about who he is, what is that saying to him, right? I think it's interesting, the Bourne Identity does like a really similar thing
I was
with
thinking.
somebody wakes up, they don't know who they are, but they're like starting to make a list of their skills. Like, I can do this and this and this and this. What does that say about me, kind of thing? But in the Bourne Identity, that is the entire plot. Like, the amnesia, what he remembers and what he doesn't remember, is the entire plot. And when he discovers who he is, that's the whole problem, right? And in this, there's just like this narrative device that's sort of being employed, but without a clear like rationale or like
Cause
story
and
logic
effect.
between the two.
Mhm.
And that was super confusing to me. Another thing that was confusing to me though, was just like, how did his teammates die? It's kind of, I think they do sort of hint at it later in the movie, or he makes a guess at maybe what happened to them. But going back to the tone piece earlier and the edge that Spielberg movies have, a lot of these classic high concept 80s adventure movies have an antagonist of some kind, or something that's like actively hostile, or there's an element of fear to them. And with a space adventure movie, you do get stakes. You get the regular old stakes, regular. You get the natural high stakes of a space adventure movie, but you don't get anybody sinister, any antagonist or like dark force in this film. And so when I was like, oh, do I need to be worried about what killed his teammates? What's going on with them? What's going to happen? I was missing the expository work for like, do I need to be worrying about this or not? If I do need to be worrying about it, what specifically should I be worrying about with it? And again, what does this, like, how does this fit together with what Grace's character arc is going to be? And so there were a lot of like, there was a lot of stuff being thrown at me, but the narrative, like, connect the dots puzzle of it in the first act wasn't being done to the extent where I felt like I had the right questions to be asking.
Right.
I just had too many questions, and I didn't know the right questions that I should have been worrying about.
Yeah, to connect my question with Michael's question, like the word that came to mind when I was watching the first half of this movie was dense, which I just felt like there was a lot of stuff, like you were just saying, Trisha, a lot of information being thrown at me, a lot of little scenes, and then you have these two different timelines, where I mentioned at the top, like the inciting incident, like you've got a guy in space, doesn't know what's going on, flashback, someone walks into his classroom, says, we need you for a thing. That to me feels like perfect. Like I don't need a lot of it. I don't need a lot of like movement in the present day, because you're giving me that structural beat in the flashback, right? But then we get to sort of this kind of cross-cutting where now we've got like fun and games. He and Carl are going to go to Home Depot and have like a great time or whatever. But then we've got like
forgot about all of that. Yeah, that's another movie too.
Just really quick on that, like that's very Lord. Like I don't remember any Home Depot montage in the book. Like that it feels completely like you're going to spend your time on that versus some of the other stuff that the book, So there are choices being made here to leave things on the cutting room floor that were probably more valuable to the character arc or the science or whatever for the fun at Home Depot, because they're having a blast.
Right. And I think that like I said when we talked about The Martian, it is fun though to watch people like hang out and do things and figure things out. Same as we get later with Grace and Rocky. Also this movie, Hail Mary and Grace, like it's weird. But like around the time where we are sort of cross-cutting between like there's a ship next to his ship, what the hell's going on? Now we're telling you about Project, or I guess probably the other way around, but we're telling you about Project Hail Mary. Now we're showing up. Now we're meeting all these people. Now we're meeting this crazy alien guy and we're learning to kind of communicate with him. After about 20 to 30 minutes of that, I was like, what's their mission? Like, what are they here for? What is anyone trying to do? And then I think we cut back to a flashback where I think it's right before she sings karaoke. Sandra Hüller's character, whose name is like
She's good in this also, by the way.
I love
She's
her
amazing.
so
She's great.
much.
Yeah,
I want her to
love
be in
her.
everything.
Everything.
I
I mean,
love
she
her.
is. So yeah.
Yeah. Good. She should be.
Good.
And no, she's great in this, and she's great at playing like every kind of character she needs to be in each of the scenes in this movie because she has very different things to do.
One more quick aside, like reading the book, like there's no better casting for this character.
Nice.
Like like it's a very memorable character in the book, and nobody else could play it.
Right.
It's
That's
got to
awesome.
be her.
Beautiful.
So, yeah.
But yeah, I think it was like when we go back to that scene where she's like, yeah, we're not coming back or whatever. I was like, oh, right. There's like a mission. We have to save a thing. Like the sun is dying, which like we've already seen in Sunshine and Hamnet. But like, sorry.
Hamnet?
Yeah.
No,
You'll
but
get there.
Stop it,
Oh
Alex.
no,
Yeah.
Brian.
Anyway, but yeah, it just, you're talking about the character arc, Michael, but I was also just thinking like the overall mission, the overall like goal, the objective, where I definitely felt like that was just lost for me for quite a while.
Yeah.
And then that's also around the time I felt myself pull away from the movie a little bit, where I was like having a nice time, but I also wasn't super compelled by any of it. And it got me back in the final, 45, 50 minutes, whatever that big kind of climactic, not just the third act, but like leading up to the third act as well.
The docking scene.
What's that?
the interstellar docking scene.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so there was that sort of is where some of the structural stuff started to feel messy to me, where it felt like going back and forth between the timelines wasn't helping the movie and was actually hindering it in some ways. And then other times it didn't feel like that at all to me. So that's kind of why that was on my mind a lot.
I think it also affects the tone of it
Yep.
too, and the tone mismatch. Because for me, I want the movie that Sandra Hüller is the movie I want to be watching. I think she's in a different movie than Ryan Gosling is. Like, I feel like when she's talking about the fate of the world, everyone's going to go extinct, like no farming, all this stuff. She has to make these extremely difficult calls, not because they're what's, right or moral, but because it's what's going to save humanity. Like all of that felt pitch perfect to me. And I was like, that's the kind of stakes that I want. And the thing that I personally am interested in is like that question. And I feel like the movie spends enough time with her and with the lead up to understanding Project Hail Mary, and they have to go and collect these, little microbes, and he's got to go to Home Depot in order to study them, in order to learn that they're alive. Like there's a lot of focus put on some of the science, some of the existential question of like the mission, but then the movie stops focusing on that. Like we're saying, you can't even get lost about what are they doing here, and it becomes about this relationship between him and Rocky, which is really moving. But I feel like I was primed for a movie about saving humanity and not primed for a movie about saving Ryan Gosling's character arc. And so I'm wondering if that's putting different emphasis or spending less time or more time on different things in that early part, or doing something different with the cross-cutting of when we're seeing how that would have affected the experience of watching this movie.
Yes, that was overwhelmingly my feeling when I was watching this, was how much earlier I wished I had had the piece about he did not choose this mission.
Right,
He never
yes.
raised his hand. He had to be drugged and loaded on board against his will. And he carries that knowledge inside of him. I think here's the thing. I love all the flashback stuff. To your point, I think Sandra Hüller is incredibly compelling. I think a lot of it is very interesting. And it's like giving Arrival vibes a little bit. Yeah, I think all of it's cool. And I think if I had like just front load more of it. Like I was really not expecting the crosscut to take the entire movie. Front load more of it. You probably don't need all of it. We definitely don't need Home Depot. And as much as I enjoy Carl and that whole dynamic, we simply don't need it. And the movie's 2 hours and 20 minutes, and it's definitely half an hour long. Too long, I think. But just chop a lot of that stuff. Keep what we need. But get us to that moment earlier where we fully understand. And it should probably come right at the character midpoint, right? Where he gets to Tau Ceti. And this is like after he's met Rocky and stuff. And it's probably right around the time when Rocky tells him that he is brave. Then we see the crosscut that he is not brave. And he knows that he is not brave. He knows that he is a coward, or he feels that way in his heart. And we need that information right there. Then for the second half of the movie, we can see how the events of after they get there and they're trying to solve these problems and stuff's going wrong, how the events of that push him to eventually make a selfless choice, which he didn't feel like he was capable of making earlier. And I have a way to fix that too, because right now the ending is so drawn out and like overwrought and could just all be neatened up anyway. And I have a pitch about how to do that. But it is necessitated absolutely on seeing that flashback much sooner.
It's really interesting because, there's a couple trailers that came out for this movie, one that gives away way more than the other, but the first main official trailer does only show kind of Rocky's hand against the glass doing like the thumbs down. And most of the trailer is the flashbacks and is the setup.
Cool.
And they essentially, I think what it's revealing is that the people making the trailer think that to understand what this movie's about, you need to see the flashbacks all the way up until he says, I am not an astronaut. I am not going on this mission. Like, that's all in the trailer. Like, and it's crazy that it's near the end of the movie, but it's like how the trailer starts is like, I am not an astronaut. Do not send me on this mission. So that's just very revealing, I think, that the people who are selling the movie think you need to know all the flashback information as context for what this movie is about.
I agree, trailer people.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is weirdly, I'm going to out our producer, Vince, because he did an Unforgivable, which is spoil Rocky for me, even after I expressly said
for
that
me
I knew
too,
nothing.
I didn't know about Rocky either until he said something.
Yeah. But I think ultimately this is one of those weird situations where if I had seen that first trailer, I would have known what movie I was walking into.
Right.
That trailer actually, like, I sort of wish they had played before the movie. And I think it's interesting because, from what I understand of the book, the revelation of his, the real reason, his cowardice or whatever we want to call that, like, works. And, I haven't heard any complaints about when that is revealed in the book. But it is interesting that in adapting it to the screen, and because of, I think, these other choices that get made, like, that is, to your point, Trisha, critical character information for me to be worried about what's going to happen with, like, his soul, because there aren't, like, other things to be worrying about. So, like you called out, there's no antagonist, which is fine. The Martian also doesn't have an antagonist as such, right? So you can do a story like that, but other things need to take its place. In the Martian, survival, right, is the antagonist. Space is the antagonist. Like we talked about in that episode, there's a scene where disaster happens on his habitat, and there's literally a thin line between him and death, and you feel the scariness of, like, at any moment this person could die, and he gets hurt and injured and all these things. At no point was I really worried that Ryan Gosling was in danger of space killing him. Like, the movie never seemed to really signal that was a thing I needed to legitimately worry about. And so I think that's really where it could have used more of that, because there's also not really conflict between him and Rocky, which is the kind of last place that you would look toward. And I was thinking about Inside Out a little bit. So Inside Out, without spoiling anything, is a story where when you meet the protagonist, it's not immediately obvious what their flaw is and what they need to change. You sense it, but it is sort of an epiphany that you go on the ride with Joy, the main character, when she sort of realizes what she needs to learn to embrace, you're sort of learning that too. And there's a parallel here with Project Hail Mary, with Grace sort of realizing, there's a reveal of what his arc is later in the movie. But in Inside Out, she is paired with a character that causes maximum conflict. She's paired with the embodiment of the character arc that she needs to go on. And I feel like Rocky doesn't do like much. Like, he's someone that the Grace character can learn to love and be willing to be brave for. Like, Rocky is serving that function for sure. But like, beat to beat, there isn't that much conflict generated.
But Rocky's rolling around in his thing, in his hamster ball, and he's got supersonic hearing, and he's really annoying.
Look, we just got done with a month of watching our friend's very needy dog. So I mean, the antagonistic force of Rocky was.
It is almost like a dog, movie.
I mean,
it's basically a dog movie.
Yeah.
Also, we saw the trailer for Mandalorian before this, which is just like
Grogu,
the sort of cheating of just like a cute thing that you need to protect is just like cheat mode.
But Tricia was just pointing out something. Like, that's a perfect example of Lord and Miller leaning into the kind of silliest possible aspect, which is like, I got no privacy. He can hear everything. And like beating that a few times in a row during a montage versus, I mean, there's so much else that happens with Rocky in the books. And some of it is more science-y and trying to figure out, like, how can we be in the same space, and how can you like build something in my ship so you can survive here and we can work together, and more problem solving. And then also kind of more sadness. Rocky's entire crew has died and he's been alone in a ship with like dead people for like, I don't know how many weeks. So there's also a little bit more tragedy with Rocky in the books. And I think, there is this gravitation towards just the lightness, just the fun, just the humor. And it does rob us a little bit of that, the edge that you're talking about, Michael, that is part of those Spielberg films.
Mm.
I also love like linguistics and like the study of communication. So like the limited series version of this, I want an episode where we start with them not being able to communicate at all, and we end with them with like Rocky speaking like a full sentence for the first time. But like the entire episode is just, how do we actually figure that out? How do we get there? How do we translate this sound into what you're trying to communicate? The movie kind of does it for a little bit, and then suddenly we're like,
right,
having basically full sentences. Yeah.
Now it's a jokey montage about the different voices, and like, ooh, here's the sexy voice, here's the Meryl Streep voice, and it's like, what you're saying, Brian, that is what the book is. The book has the time to spend the length of a TV episode, like scratching your way from nothing to communication. But this movie is not interested in that process as much as it is in getting to like the fun once they can communicate.
And of course, an obvious reference for that, and I'm curious if, Tricia, you found this as one of the movies that
Arrival.
People are saying it's referencing. Arrival does an excellent job of making us, spoilers, Arrival is an alien movie.
About linguistics.
About linguistics. You are terrified of the aliens at the beginning, and by the end, you have an emotional relationship with them. I think E.T. also makes you terrified of the aliens, and then you have emotion. The amount of time that I have to be terrified of Rocky is like 60 seconds, and then he's doing the samba dancing. And I feel like it robs you of the that investment, that time to worry, so that you get the relief of, oh, this is a joyous thing, actually. Like, this movie feels like it's only interested in the payoff part and not the work, the buildup, the doubt that makes that payoff so fun for, I don't know, curmudgeons like me. But I'm curious if you've seen, if Arrival was one of the movies people were talking about.
Yes. So, Arrival is here. Interstellar is here, obviously. It goes back to like classic, 2001 stuff. I feel like, Close Encounters is kind of in there, as I talked about. And just say, E.T. is a huge reference point for this, obviously. And then, lesser, or I guess was gonna say lesser family friendly, but some of the like menace of space stuff has also been brought up, and I think that there's some of that in here too. But overall, I think I was laughing a lot in the theater because I think that where the movie references or like trades on my knowledge of the genre, it's doing it often for humor, right? It's doing it in like hey, he's going to launch himself out and he's going to like look super cool and like be like do a cool spacewalk, and instead he's going to be incredibly bad at that, right? And same thing. He's like, he's in zero gravity now, and like he for some reason can't navigate at all in zero gravity around his ship, and it's all physical comedy, and it's playing with sci-fi convention for that reason. And the same thing with a lot of the other like he's big jump scare with Rocky. That's very, familiar to us from sci-fi horror movies like Alien, whatever. And then it's kind of just benign because it's all funny. And I actually think that most of that stuff made me laugh. Like, as somebody who's seen pretty much all of the sci-fi movies that are being referenced here, Passengers is another one that I, is neither here nor there, but definitely feels like it's in the mix. But as someone who's seen those movies, I am usually surprised and delighted when it sort of subverts my expectations for humorous reasons. I do think that a lot of the plot beat complication, just really the structure of how the space adventure unfolds. It's like I kept trying to I didn't try. My brain naturally was being like, here's what's happening now. He's gonna get hurt. Rocky's gonna have to break out of his thing to save him. Oh no, now Rocky's hurt. Now we're gonna have to save Rocky. And that kind of the structural convention that feels like it's derivative rather than original is where I do start to bump on it. And so some of the reviews that I was reading, and this is how I felt too, is like, this movie is a lot of fun. It doesn't feel particularly new, both in its sort of throwbackiness to 80s and 90s high concept sci-fi adventure movies, but also in its reference and sometimes loving, at other times seeming to lack self-awareness around the way that it references or homages other movies from the genre. And so, yeah, I was kind of like, please, please, please don't let there be a million small Rockies at the end. And that kind of like, just what is the expected plot beat here, right? Like the unexpected humor, I like generally. The expected plot beat, I really don't like, and it starts to really weigh the movie down, I think, after a while.
Is a million small Rockies the expected plot beat?
I don't know. Yeah, because he's a teacher. He's going to walk back into his classroom.
Okay.
I don't know. It felt that way to me. It felt like exactly what I was expecting to see at the time.
Yeah, I was not expecting us to follow him to the planet where they have made him a very nice Earth-like habitat, and he's now a school teacher for young aspiring rocks. Like it was an and that's in the book.
That's how the book ends. The book ends with he's not able to go home because they don't have enough fuel to get back to Earth, and so they go to his home planet, and he has made a habitat to live, and he is teaching rocks about human stuff.
I did like the Contact reference. Anybody there? I was sitting directly next to you, Michael.
Oh, the beach?
Straight at you on the beach. I was like, oh, we got to the planet and it's a beach and here's somebody walking toward him.
Oh, yeah. I don't think that was conscious. When the ship blew up, I was like, oh, they did that in Contact also.
Yeah, they did.
In the distance. Yeah.
Yeah. In Contact.
But also, I was confused about that because did the ship blow up? Because I think in the book, it's like, it's a lab.
It's a lab or something.
Because they sold a ship ready to go like a few days later, it seemed like, and that's why he had to be ready. But they had just been looking at the ship, and that was like, I feel like there's some very important plot beat things that are skimmed over really quickly in this movie. once again, for more of the heart, more of the humor. And that is part of that imbalance, I think. Like, just like, there's so much to get in here. And I feel the filmmakers are less interested in grounding us in these hard plot elements and more interested in just having the fun. Now, on the flip side, though, I genuinely do love a dog movie. Like, I love Rocky. Like, I really do love Rocky, and I think it is an incredibly sweet character. And part of the Spielberg thing is that the idea that an alien or an otherworldly being could actually be even like better than us,
Right.
not a
More
not a
human
scary
than us,
thing,
yeah.
but more human than us, actually teach us about our humanity and bring out the best in us. And there's a purity to Rocky where he is just kind of has a childlike wonder and excitement about things. And so I also understand and appreciate the amount of time that is put into that, and even if it comes at the expense of the more Martian elements.
Yeah, I think I do want to head into lessons, but I think it is important to flip it over to the positive things here also. If I hated Rocky, but I'm a robot. But I understand that there is the work that was done to make an audience care about a faceless rock was exceptional and stellar. And it did feel a little bit like cheat codes. Brian, you referenced Baby Yoda. I think I have an allergy to those shortcuts and really this is my alien in my hard sci-fi movie. But putting aside my curmudgeon thing, the movie does know ultimately what its emotional story is about, like you're saying, Alex. And I think it does really put in the effort and moves that to the forefront and tells a very moving story. And even just reading the first 2 chapters of the book, which is all I've been able to get through, while reading it, I was like, how do you make this into a movie? This is the way it's told,
Yes.
the content of it, this is not an easy adaptation. So I think it also bears saying that this is a really, really excellently executed movie. If you are someone that hasn't seen every sci-fi movie and doesn't know all these references, it's probably new and fun for you. And so that's good. This is the requisite. It's okay to like this movie part of
most
the
people
episode.
love this movie, Michael.
Yeah.
Yes,
universal
I know.
acclaim. People absolutely love this movie. And I think because it does, seeing it in a big theater with an audience, it's a crowd pleaser, and yes, it's borrowing from all that came before it, but it's doing it well. It's the space cinematography is gorgeous, and there are moments of real awe and spectacle. And I think, if you're a young person going to a theater and seeing this movie with your family, it is probably a transformative experience. So yes, we are old and curmudgeonly, but this is a wondrous, lovely movie, and people are loving it.
Yeah. Crowd pleaser right there is, I think, exactly what I was feeling when I walked out of this. And I was like, this is a good movie. It's a good movie. Objectively, I think that's true. And a lot of people will like it. And that is also a good thing.
And it's original. It's not IP.
Good.
It's not a sequel. It's an original one-off story.
Good.
Yay.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. And optimistic, which we called out loving
Yes.
about
Yes.
The Martian
Yes.
too,
Yeah.
and how we wanted more of that. Here it is, which is really, really great.
My overall feeling about this movie is everything you're saying, which is just excellent, great, really. And then all of my own
Or I guess
personal, yeah.
Sorry. I did a thumbs up and then realized I did it the wrong way. I gotta
Yeah.
do the thumbs down. I apologize.
Amaze.
Right. But yeah, it's excellent. And then here are the things where it feels not for me personally, and here are the things critically that I have an issue with, but also couched in a movie that did a very good job of at what it was trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But as always, there can be lessons to be learned from even the best movies. Brian, what's your lesson that you're taking away from Project Hail Mary?
And yeah, I think as a lesson, I'll just try to answer my own question about the structural beats between these timelines. And I think I have a pretty solid answer, which is really just I want to feel like I'm wherever I expect to be in the movie at this point, because we've seen movies where there's no crisis or what we would think of a crisis, but we know we're in the third act because we're launching into that final thing because like the movie just knows how to tell us we're in that place in the movie now, right? And I think I'm thinking about the three acts of this movie as closely as I can kind of place them. And like I mentioned before, or twice, I guess, the inciting incident, the first act feels very like person in space, flashback, inciting incident. Great. I have everything I need to know kind of for this setup of this movie. Maybe not character arc setup, et cetera, as we mentioned, but in terms of just where we are in this story. And then the second act is when we kind of get messy going back and forth from Project Hail Mary. What is it? We're going over here. Hey, there's a ship next to my ship. That's weird. Oh, they're sending me a thing. That's weird. But like also Project Hail Mary, and we're going over here. And these guys aren't coming back. And just kind of like, wait, what's the mission? Where are we? What's going on here? When I start to feel like I think the midpoint of this movie is when Grace and Rocky like kind of hatch the plan of what then becomes the sort of climactic thing. But that doesn't feel like a big
Right.
Tony Stark solved time travel or something, right? Like a big aha, high five, whatever. It just feels like, okay, cool, we have a plan. So like let's figure out what the next step is, right? Which is fine. It doesn't have to feel like a big exciting midpoint, but I am left as the audience member feeling like I don't really know where we are anymore, right? Feeling like it's been 2 hours when it's been an hour and 20 minutes or something.
Right.
And then into the third act, so the sort of again feeling what I expect to feel at certain points. I think we have this crisis at the end of the second act, which is in the past, the flashback, the building blowing up, whatever it is, and losing the scientists, and what's going to happen. That's about 45 minutes before the end of the movie, which this movie is 2.5 hours, so that feels kind of right around that shift into Act 3. Then we have in the present this big climactic, docking sequence, as we said, trying to get the predator or whatever. And then we have that oh no, we achieved our goal, but Rocky is hurt. That sort of like crisis of the third act kind of thing that we're used to having in movies. Like we did it, we beat the bad guy, but like we lost our friend or whatever. And then there's like more movie, right? So then it's just kind of like, cool, now he's better, great, goodbye, I'm going back to Earth. Oh, wait a minute, wake up, the astrophage are getting through the xenonite. I got to turn around, I got to go back, I got to re-meet him. Now we have to solve this problem. Now we're going back to your planet, and like I don't dislike any of that, but it starts to feel exhausting, especially on a first watch. These are things that if I watch a movie a second, third time, might not be a problem. But the first time, I'm like, where are we? What's going on? How is there still movie left, right? And I think that is the danger of especially the multiple timelines. But even regardless of that, just the idea that like I don't necessarily want to feel like we're off to this part of the movie, but now we have to stop and rewind and go back to this thing we already did, or where are we? That kind of feeling. So I don't know. I think it's like you want your audience to feel that they're in the right place at the right time, I guess is the most succinctly I can say it.
Do you want to hear my fix? I'm going to fix it.
Fix it.
Do it.
Okay. So I thought a lot about this because it really, really annoyed me that Rocky was in peril twice. And I was like, Rocky's gonna die again. We just did the Rocky's gonna die. Ugh, okay. And part of the reason I think we encountered that problem was because of the character arc issues we identified earlier. And we didn't have the crucial information about what Grace's flaw is. We did not have that prior to Rocky putting himself on the line. Like the reason Rocky almost dies and the crisis is because he sacrifices his life essentially to save Grace's. And I have no idea what that means to Grace because I don't have the information about Grace feels in his heart that he is a coward and that he can't make the most selfless choice he needs to make. Okay, so in my version of this, we put that information at the midpoint, like I said. We get it much, much, much earlier, and then we are thinking about it and it imbues meaning into the entire second half of the movie. Then we have the whole sequence happen exactly the way that it does, where there's a fuel leak and, Grace loses consciousness. Rocky has to break out of his thing to save Grace. And then when he wakes up, he discovers that Rocky is seriously hurt. Okay. Then we can just neaten up the entire third act of the movie by having like maybe a short crisis sequence where he's like gonna wait to see if Rocky gets better. He's working with the astrophage and the predator, the Taumiba, to see if he can get it to breed on Earth. And he's doing kind of those science-y things. And meanwhile, he's just hoping beyond hope that Rocky is going to get better. But Rocky is not getting better, right? We can plant the idea earlier that maybe Rocky needs to go back to his own atmosphere and go home in order to get better, right?
Better. Yeah.
And because of the fuel leak that caused this whole thing in the first place, they have spent too much fuel and they can no longer share the fuel, right? Rocky was planning to give some of his fuel to Grace so that Grace could get back to Earth, but now there's not enough to do that. They can only go to one destination.
Really quick, like, I feel like they didn't deal with that.
They didn't.
Like that was really strange to me. And I think the book does kind of deal with that as part of the problem in the ending. But yeah, he lost so much fuel, but then they were like, cool, plan is going according to plan. See ya. Anyway, sorry.
So then you can go to this really dark place where Grace has to choose, like, do I take all of the fuel myself and go home? And Rocky's dying anyway. Maybe I can't save him. Maybe I just need to go back to Earth. And I have the Taumiba. I can rationalize it to myself. I can make a selfish choice and save Earth. I can't save Rocky anyway, blah, blah, blah. But then, because we understand what the heart of the character arc is, you could even have Rocky make a turn for the worse. And then he's like, I have to make this choice right now. And then he instead decides to go back to Rocky's home planet and take him home. And he sends the probes back to Earth right there. He takes Rocky home. He gets there and he's like, you have to save him. He gives him to the hospital people on Iridian or whatever. And he makes that choice and we understand what it means. And then the whole third act is neat and tidy. And he can have a problem getting to Rocky's home planet with, whatever, that's fine. But then it's just so simple and clean of like the climactic choice is save my life or save my friends. And I'm going to decide to save my friends because of what he has taught me over the course of this thing. And then you don't have the big long emotional goodbye in the tunnel where they're doing the whole thing and it's all very overwrought. You can have a moment like that before. You can have a really sweet, touching moment before they do the, like, we're going to scoop up the predator mission. You can still have that, like, meaning making before Rocky gets seriously hurt. So it would probably push a lot of that stuff, deeper into the third act. But, like, I think it would just make it all cleaner.
It's basically just compressing those two beats
into one beat,
Rocky,
which it should be anyway, because it's already a double beat. Fix the double beat.
Yeah. And that is straight from the book. The book does have that kind of third act twist, essentially, where it's like we think we've solved the problem. It's almost like the Dark Knight. We say it kind of has 4 acts. It's that final twist of like, oh, wait a minute, actually, I didn't get out scot-free. There's a final dilemma, and this is the really hard choice I have to make now. And I kind of do like that, but I see what you're saying, Trisha, and I think that's one of the interesting things that this movie is, which is that it's both a very faithful adaptation in the sense that it doesn't really skip any steps, but because it doesn't skip any steps, it has to breeze through so many of them so quickly. So it's an interesting adaptation. It's like both everything's there and also none of it's quite there 100% because it has to all go by so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think for me, what I like and what you're saying, Trisha, is like why it doesn't feel like The Dark Knight to me is that it doesn't feel like our protagonist has made a climactic choice because I don't know what his arc is at that moment. So like, I guess he's going to save Earth and he's going to say bye to his friend, like, ta-da, like, but that doesn't have the same meaning. The meaning comes from that second choice where like, I'm going to choose to sacrifice myself to save my friend. Anyway, it's interesting. It's complicated, convoluted, interesting ending. But I do like your point, Brian, to jump all the way back there. I think I was thinking about hidden figures. So to your point about when cross-cutting between different storylines, where do you want your beats to be? And I think really what that's identifying is there's the main protagonist beat that we're following, the main story arc that has its beats, and then you have subplots, and you can put those beats in different places. Our video on Hidden Figures sort of shows how they move those beats around,
Right.
but they are grouped such that overall you always feel like you're in the part of the story that you want to be in, and the protagonist's main arc is the one driving all of that. So I think it's another one to reference.
And part of what's maybe confusing about it too is that we're not cutting between a subplot and a main plot really, because
Right.
it's all the main plot. It's
Right.
all about Ryan Gosling's character. And so you need the information from both plots for the meaning. You can't really shift, Anyway, we've been talking about this the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting because I was thinking about, what is this feeling I'm having watching this movie for the first time? And it is kind of the feeling I have watching a Christopher Nolan movie for the first time, usually, where it's like there's just too much stuff in this movie and it's going way too fast. And like, what? And then on repeat viewings, I can soak it all in more, and it actually is all there. And they said the thing just one time really fast, but it is there. And once you hear that, you're like, oh, that's what this scene's about. So I am looking forward to seeing this movie again, because I do think it is one of those, like, I'm watching a latter day Christopher Nolan movie for the first time, and I'm just overwhelmed, and it's too much.
Yeah, I could see this movie very much benefiting from repeat viewings. Once you know what you're in for, you can enjoy it that much more.
Yeah.
Alex, what's your lesson?
This may be contradicting Trish's lesson a bit, but I think one of the moments in the movie that really does work for me is that double beat. I think both the moment where Rocky breaks out to save him is so affecting, and I think I agree that I don't know, had we gotten the cowardly flashback by that
No.
point?
I think so.
We hadn't?
hadn't.
Interesting.
It comes after that. Even if you only want to move it 10 minutes, it still
Right.
has to come before that.
That's really interesting. And so I wonder if I benefited as a book reader, because in the book, you have access to Grace's inner monologue throughout the story, and it's very clear. He's like, I do not want to die. I am not ready to die. I do not want to die. He is not a person willing to sacrifice himself. So it is very clear in the book, and I forget where all the flashbacks land, but you do know that he's not somebody who is prepared to give his life for something. And so you're right. It's interesting. I may have the benefit of there being more power in that moment because of my knowledge from the book. But I do think, I know it's like expected, but I do like that moment when a character like Rocky breaks out of their containment area and self-sacrifices for the main character. I agree that the period like between that and the second repeat beat is not as powerful as it could be, because it's just kind of like he's asleep and I'm hoping that he'll wake up and I'll kind of just hang out until he does. I would want a protagonist to be kind of more active, and I think even in the book he's like trying to science, like, how do I help Rocky heal? How do I help his species heal from this like grave injury? And so a lot of that's missing. But I do think that the final choice is 100% the correct choice and is a really effective moment for the character, which is like, once again, if it had been set up throughout the whole movie, it would have been that much more powerful, especially for first-time viewers. But I really do, I think both the book and the movie were really smart in setting up a science-y scenario in which there is a final dramatic choice for this character who has not been willing to sacrifice himself the whole time, to realize that, no, I have grown to care for and love this other being, and I am willing to die for that person and for his people. And so I think I agree that there's execution problems potentially, but I do think that moment where he thinks he's gotten his cake and can eat it too, learns that he can't have his cake and eat it too, and then has to make a real hard choice. I do like that setup of like the false ending, the twist, and then the real difficult choice. Maybe it could have all been done better, set up better, but I like when movies do that, where you kind of think, we got off scot-free, we did it. Oh no, you have not learned your lesson actually, hero. There's a real choice to be made now. Are you going to do it? And when you do it, that's the real change. So I like those two beats both existing separately. I think there's probably a better way for it to all have been set up and then executed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're speaking to the power of a complete transformational character arc beat, and then the 1-2 punch of, we often talk about happy endings are movies where characters get what they need and what they want. Everyone goes home happy.
Right.
And more drama movies are they get what they need but not what they want, and that's a certain kind of, and it's sort of the character thinks they got what they needed and what they wanted, but you're snatching that away, and it's like, no, like you really have to prove it now. Like go out and really prove it under the worst possible circumstances, and that's a powerful moment to give to your characters. Trisha, did you have a lesson besides the fix?
I do, and I can be quick with it. Sorry,
okay,
the fix was attached to Brian's lesson, but just that it's fun to watch characters who are not perfect, and by not perfect in this case, I mean not good at his job. Really, like it is fun to watch him bumble around on that spaceship. It is fun to watch him even before that, like when he's, talking to a room full of military people and only the one guy is like with him on his references and everybody else is just, like being a very cold audience and stuff like that. It's fun. It's just fun to watch a character who is willing to not be cool. Like, or just, the character is written to not be that cool, to not be that good at his job, to not be perfect, to make a lot of mistakes. Like the moment where he opens the canister and then realizes he should not have done that on his ship, like right in his own face. He's like, oh no. I like that stuff. It's charming. And I think, Ryan Gosling's performance here is overall great. Like we recently talked about The Martian, and I think dollar for dollar, Ryan Gosling probably has better comedic timing than Matt Damon. Like, I think he has better comedy chops, and he works in this movie. I like his physicality as he's like flailing around, and even when he's, verbally sparring with Rocky, or like really halfway talking to himself, but then sort of talking to Rocky, right? I like all of that. I think so much of this movie is that. And it wouldn't be tolerable in any way if this was somebody that was like trying to be cooler than Ryan Gosling is trying to be in this movie. And so I overall think the characterization is a smart one for someone who, isn't cut out for the mission. And when we talked about Jaws, we talked about how the team in Jaws is like the sheriff character. Sheriff Brody, Roy Scheider's character in that movie. The hinge point of the team is somebody with a lot of willpower and none of the skills. And that's going to always be compelling. And so he has, Ryan Gosling's character Grace in this has motivation just because he's stuck on this ship now. So what else is he going to do? But like he has none of the skills really in so many ways. And that's entertaining.
Yeah, I think that's a cool call out to don't be afraid to make your characters not cool. Like there's empathy that can come from that. I think that for me, I wanted to see more of him be good at some of it, though. And I think this goes back to sort of the overall thing we've been saying a lot, which is I think the movie yada yada's past the work to solve that stuff and just jumps between I'm an astronaut, I'm scared to die, but I'm doing dumb stuff to I've figured it out, it's fine. I want to see more of him figuring out, because I didn't believe that he was doing any of the things that he was doing. But he was very entertaining.
Even his and Rocky's relationship, like, once again, there's long montages of them in the, like, hologram room, like, watching fireworks and stuff. I don't think that was even in the book, like, that hologram room. Maybe it was. But you can also build relationship through solving problems. And they do a lot of science together in the book. I mean, they're basically scientists from different species trying to work together to solve a problem. And that could be more compelling, I would argue, than a musical montage in the hologram room.
Right. I agree. I won't keep picking on Rocky. I will move on. And just quickly say that I think my lesson that's good to be reminded of is sometimes when writing, it's good to mix up your scenes and experiment with where the beats fall and just see what that does to your story. I think we have identified that for me, I like your pitch, Trisha, of we reveal the character arc flaw from Grace earlier in the movie. I think that gives so much meaning that is necessary for me to be clued into the story. But also, like, that's a cool, like, twist reveal to have at the end of your story, that your protagonist, who maybe because of sci-fi conventions you assume is this brave person that's willing to risk their life, is a coward. Like, try putting that scene in both places and do pros and cons. Doing that with your story and all the big turning beats can be illuminating. So do that. All right. What else have we been watching? Trisha, what else have you been watching recently?
Sure. I don't know why I watched this. Actually, I do know why I watched this. So I recently watched The Quiet American, which is a 2002 movie starring Michael Caine and Brendan Fraser, based on the novel by Graham Greene. And I love the novel by Graham Greene, and for some reason I had never seen the movie, so I was like, you know what, I'm going to watch this. And the movie is fine. It's a bit of just like it's a Vietnam War drama, or yeah, it's a war drama. And it's actually like set in Vietnam, but before the war, and it's about the like CIA agent who like low key started the war. You could read the novel. That's what you should do with your time if you're interested in The Quiet American. Anyway, but it was an entertaining movie. It's directed by Philip Noyce, who is an Australian director that made some of the Jack Ryan films. And because I had watched The Quiet American, it showed me the like algorithm was like, do you want to watch this other Philip Noyce movie though? And it's the movie Dead Calm. And it's a Sam Neill, Nicole Kidman, Billy Zane, like contained horror thriller thing set on a boat.
Interesting.
And
cast,
I really enjoyed it. It's from 1989. Really young Nicole Kidman. Like one of the movies that like made her career. And she and Sam Neill are a couple, and they're like on a yacht. They've suffered like a personal tragedy, and so they're like taking some time away, and they're just going to be on a yacht in the middle of the ocean for a while. And then they find a shipwrecked boat, and they pull only one survivor out of it, and it's Billy Zane. And I'm sorry to tell you, he's hiding something. But it just becomes this like they're on a boat in the middle of the ocean psychological thriller thing. And it is goofy. It takes some really big swings. It's cheesy. It's also totally thrilling. It's a showpiece for all of the actors. I had a blast. So strong recommend from me if you are a Philip Noyce fan, or any of those actors that I mentioned. I really enjoyed Dead Calm from 1989.
Noise. Yes.
You guys I knew it was coming. There it is.
There's no way not to do it.
I know.
Cool. Alex, what have you been watching recently?
So a few weeks ago, I went and saw Wuthering Heights, the new adaptation by Emerald Fennell, starring Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi. And wow, what a movie. What a strange and exhilarating and weird and delicious experience. I don't know. I can't say this movie is good, but it's something, and it's a lot, and it's just, I think I've heard interviews with the director talking about how she's trying to make a movie that felt like what it was like to read Wuthering Heights as like an angsty teenager, and that is, I think, accurate to what the movie feels like. It's got some really wild scenes, really wild choices, really almost like Tim Burton-esque set design and visuals. It's over the top in kind of all the best ways.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah,
yes.
It's got kind of like a Kubrick visual palette at times, and
Barry Lyndon
audacity. So yeah, I I can't say that I had a bad time in the theater because it was a luscious, insane theater experience. But it was so funny to kind of hear an older generation experience it, because I know like my aunt went and saw it with her friend and they were like, that was trash, that was awful, that was so, ugh.
Those are two different things.
Yeah. But I think it is trash, and I think I kind of I kind of loved it. So
Hell yeah.
I don't know what to say about Wuthering Heights besides it's all of these things. And it's got Charlie XCX on the soundtrack, and yeah, there's musical montages with just kind of angsty pop. It's all the things.
I will say, I had a similar reaction to you. I personally did not expect the movie to be literature, and so I was not disappointed when it was not literature.
I feel like the boomer women were like, they read Wuthering Heights when they were young and wanted an adaptation of that book.
And they didn't see the trailer for this movie.
Yeah, they didn't see enough marketing.
Right.
The poster alone would tell you, I feel. It's just a bodice ripper. That's all it is.
Cool. Brian, what have you been watching recently?
Well, what I'm not going to talk about, but I'll mention briefly, is The Bride, which is the other woman's insane take on classic tale from the past 2 months, or past 6 weeks even. And The Bride is the Wuthering Heights. I had a great time with The Bride. I have no idea how I feel about it. It's kind of incredible at times and kind of awful at times and kind of just a big mess. So still processing that one. But I won't be surprised if it's a cult classic in 10 years. But what I did just watch very recently, it was Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die.
Ooh.
The Gore Verbinski movie that just recently came out.
Gore Verbinski.
Yeah. The premise is Sam Rockwell steps into a diner in futuristic tubes and trash bag, and he says, I'm from the future. I need a team of people in this diner to save the world. And this is his 117th time doing this. So it's like a time loop movie, but where you're only seeing several loops in, and then he gathers this team: Zazie Beetz, Haley Lou Richardson, Michael Pena, Juno Temple. And then they have to go on this perilous mission through the neighborhood, and there are things trying to kill them. And I won't say too much about their mission or what's after them or any of that. But then along the way, we get flashback stories for the main characters and kind of what's going on with them, and also what this story world is, because the story world is already insane in the present day. It's not just insane in the future. It's also insane right now. So we kind of learn what the story world is along the way through the flashbacks. Really entertaining. It has some interesting things to say about some of its subject matter. What kept it for me from being, I think, like The Bride, I was see the trailer for that or this, and I'm just going, oh my God, this is the meest movie maybe in 5 years or something. But this one, it felt so derivative in so many ways, where each of the flashbacks, I was oh, that's a Black Mirror episode. And not, oh, this could be a Black Mirror episode. No, that's literally this specific Black Mirror episode that I've already seen. Every single time it would do a flashback, and kind of the overall story is another Black Mirror episode. But I saw Project Hail Mary. I saw some reviews that said there's not a lot of new stuff here, but it's kind of a greatest hits of everything that the movie is pulling from. And I feel that's accurate. I feel and this was a pretty goodest hits of a lot of those things, but also it has its own ideas. But there were times where I'm I feel I've seen, it's Everything Everywhere All at Once meets Edge of Tomorrow meets Terminator, kind of Matrix-y, obviously Black Mirror, as I mentioned. It all kind of works, and I was really happy at the end. But it is a movie where you go watch it going I feel I've seen this before, even though this also feels the most original movie I've ever seen. It's weirdly original and derivative at the same time. But I had a blast with it. So good luck, have fun, don't die.
Those aren't the worst things to put into a blender together.
I was going to say.
Right, a couple hours.
Right, exactly, yeah. Oh, and the screenwriter is apparently writing the next the Edge of Tomorrow sequel. which
Okay.
I guess is called Live, Die, Repeat, Repeat, which I really hope it's not.
What?
Gotta live up to their title.
They still haven't figured out what the name of this movie is.
I'm just
like
so
10 years later.
confused with what happened there with like the marketing people that were like, you got to do Live, Die, Repeat. And so it's going to be bigger on the poster. Yeah.
It's very strange. Anyway, apparently this guy is writing the sequel, which is I don't know how I feel about that, but it's an interesting choice.
Interesting. Cool.
Okay. Michael.
So I revisited a couple movies. The Hunger Games. So I remember seeing the first Hunger Games movie and being like, okay, yeah, it's fine, but like it has some issues. And then seeing Catching Fire twice in one day because I was like, Catching Fire is so good. Oh my God, what the hell?
Correctly
Interestingly, revisiting these movies, I found Catching Fire kind of lackluster and disappointing, actually. And the first Hunger Games I found to be pretty extraordinary and really interesting and moving. And so this is a little bit of like a revisionist Michael session that's happening where this completely polar opposite of me at the time. But there's really good storytelling design in the Hunger Games. I think I bumped on some of the directing style stuff, which does still annoy me. But the world that gets created and the conflict and the standing up to this authoritarian dictatorship, it's all very like moving and inspiring and worth revisiting, I think, because it's really, really good. So that's kind of my random what I've been watching is the Hunger Games series. And the original is like very moving and very well structured and written. So
what about the Mockingjay? I never got that far.
Yeah, these like spin-off ones.
No, the third movie.
Three, part two.
Yeah.
They are not as good. Yes.
Okay.
Can't skip.
PETA gets weird.
Yeah. Oh, I remember being so annoyed by PETA, even in the first one. And this time I was like, oh, no, PETA's fine. His name is PETA, but like, PETA's cool.
I have so many follow-up questions, Michael,
PETA!
that I'll ask you off mic.
Sounds good.
Like, what happened exactly that led us here, but...
It's not an interesting story. I'll tell you later. Anyway, the Hunger Games. That's good. Okay. This has been our conversation about Project Hail Mary. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We want to say a big thank you, as always, to the patrons that make this show possible. As I mentioned, we have unique new content on Fight Club over on the Beyond Screenplay YouTube channel. So head over there, check it out. Let us know what you think. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you want to help us make more episodes, you can go to the Beyond Screenplay Patreon. The link is in the show notes. I want to say thank you to our producer, Vince Major. I'm Michael Tucker, and I'm joined today by Trisha Rand, Brian Bittner, and Alex Calleros, and we will see you in the next episode.
Bye, everybody.
Rubbing my arm.
Perfect.
I guess.
Amaze.
Oh, boy.